Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new podcast. Today, we are going to continue with our series on the history of Islam, and we have been discussing the history of the Crusades. We spoke before about the First Crusade and the establishment of the Crusader states and the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Today, we are going to continue with the Second Crusade that took place between 1145 up to 1150. We will discuss the Third Crusade and the important military leader, the one who unified the Muslim world, Saladin al-Ayyubi, Saladin, how he is known in the West. But let's start with the situation at the time that the Second Crusade was declared by the Pope. We briefly spoke how the papacy realized that a new counteroffensive was needed in order to secure the Muslim states and the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Therefore, we have that at the time of 1145, the Second Crusade saw the appearance of great Islamic leaders such as Nur ad-Din in Syria and Usama ibn Munqidh, who gave hopes to the Muslim world and imbued the Islamic armies with a new spirit of victory. And regarding this, in the book of Contemplation written by Usama ibn Munqidh, he lived between 1095 up to 1188. Usama ibn Munqidh was the nephew of the Emir Shaizar in northern Syria, and he recounts many battles and calamities at the time, and how, from the Islamic perspective, everything that was happening was God's will, and there was no way to escape fate. Thus, and I quote from his book, "I say that glory belongs to He who executes His will over His creations, bestowing life and sending death, He who lives and never dies. With His hand all goodness He brings. He has power over all things." Therefore, for them, everything was in God's hands, and soon or later, He would give victory to the Muslim believers. And regarding this, we have to remember that the First Crusade caught the Muslim world really without preparation, because they were not really expecting such a massive attack from the Muslims from Europe, and the Muslim world was not unified. There were many divisions, the Seljuk Empire, the Zengi in northern Syria, and many divisions that propitiated, or in this case opened the way for the Christian armies to achieve a swift and decisive victory in the beginning. Now, by the time of the Second Crusade, 1145, the Muslim world was starting to get united. And as I mentioned, we have the appearance of important military figures. And as I mentioned, Nur ad-Din in northern Syria was an important Muslim leader who started to gather armies in order to face the threat of the Christian knights and the newly established Kingdom of Jerusalem. Now, the Second Crusade was a failure for the Christian troops, who were not able to take back the important city of Edessa in Syria. And the very reason why the crusade started was because Edessa was lost, and the Christians decided to take it back. It was an important and strategic position, but they failed. As I mentioned, the Muslim world was uniting, and it was a very solid counteroffensive. After many defeats, the Christians thought that God had abandoned them and was not fighting anymore by their side. Therefore, the Christian morale was really low, while the Muslim spirit, the spirit of Islam, was really strong and rising and spreading all over the Muslim world. The Crusaders failed also to take the very important city of Damascus in Syria, and adding this to their lack of preparation and coordinate efforts, they were forced to retreat and the Muslims celebrated a great victory by 1149. In general, we could say that after many battles and years of conflict, the Crusaders were really exhausted and could not successfully contend the Islamic counterattack on them. By this time, the Muslim world had had enough time to react, prepare, and organize in a very effective way that was able to neutralize the Crusaders and destroy their states. They were united under the great commander Saladin, Saladin ibn Ayyub, who inspired them and was looked upon as someone guided by God, destined to free Islamic lands from foreign dominion. What had started by the calling of Pope Urban II by 1095 as a liberating campaign of Christian holy places and pilgrims had ended now, at least momentarily, with an Islamic reaction and successful recovery after the initial defeats during the First Crusade. The Middle East was for the future years to come to the scenarios of other crusades and of bloodiest battles for the control of a land holy to the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, we have that after the failure of the Second Crusade for the Christian side, was of course a great victory for the Muslims, the Christians decided that they needed to relaunch a third crusade and retake the territories. As I mentioned, by the time of the Second Crusade, there was a rising figure, there was the figure of Saladin. But it was not until the Third Crusade that this great ingenious prince of Islam really emerged and show all his strength and his leadership uniting the Muslim world. The Third Crusade was witness of the mighty of the great Saladin. Now, the Third Crusade, who lasted between 1189 up to 1192, only 3 years, we have to say that although the Second Crusade ended in failure, the Crusaders still held significant power. But soon such power was about to crumble when the Muslims united under a new and victorious leader, the most important of all during the time. As I said, Saladin Yusuf ibn Ayyub, who lived between 1137 up to 1193, and Saladin was a military leader of Kurdish origin. He was from Iraq, and he rose to power and became the first Sultan of Egypt and Syria and the founder of the Ayyubid dynasty. Under his leadership, Muslims united and saw him as their protector, as the protector of Islam and Islamic holiest sites from the invasion of the Crusaders. Saladin was pressing hard on the Crusaders and slowly but surely was taking back territory for Islam. Ferocious battles took place, but the Battle of Hattin in the year 1187, in which Saladin's troops defeated the Frankish armies, was a decisive battle. The Muslim victory was devastating for the Crusaders, who that same year saw for their dismay the fall of the kingdom of Jerusalem and the Holy Land. Therefore, Jerusalem was in Muslim hands once again. This was a very decisive event because it marked the beginning of the Third Crusade. Regarding this event, we have, and I will quote here, an important document from the Encyclopedia Britannica, who says the following: "The news of the fall of Jerusalem reached Europe even before the arrival there of Archbishop Josius of Tyre, whom the Crusaders had sent with urgent appeals for aid. Pope Urban III soon died, shocked, it was said, by the sad news. His successor, Gregory VIII, issue a crusade bull and call for fasting and penitence. Now, as we saw, the impact was indeed significant for the Christian world, and soon the calling of the Pope was answered by kings and penitent soldiers who, motivated by promises of eternal life, remission of sins, and monetary gains, embarked on a journey to recover Jerusalem for Christianity. But even though the most powerful monarchs of Europe answered the call of the Pope, funded the crusade, meaning they gave their money, and instilled great optimism within the Christian army, Jerusalem was not recovered, and the Third Crusade also ended in failure. Crusader infighting was one of the reasons of this failure, meaning that the Christians were not united. The Christian knights and the different lords were divided, and we have the history calls this figure Reynald de Chatillon. He was really it has been described in really negative terms. Indeed, he was not even following the orders of the Christian king Baldwin, and he twice violated the truce, the pact that was established between the Christians and the troops of the Muslim troops commanded by Saladin of certain peace for 2 years, and in several occasions Reynald de Chatillon disobeyed his king, attacked Muslim pilgrims and robbed their possessions and killed some of them, took many prisoners. It was a time in which this Christian lord indeed did many things that are in fact reproachable, and either the Christians and the Muslim side saw him as someone with no values, with no honor, because of his attitude, and at the end he ended decapitated. And as we saw, the Christians were shocked with all of this news, and in short time they simply collapsed. Now, it was not, when I say collapse, I mean the kingdom of Jerusalem and all these Christian territories that were under the Frankish, and now were under the control of the troops of Saladin. Now, this was not the end, because the Christians did not give up, and a new crusade was launched in the year 1202. That was the Fourth Crusade, and regarding the Fourth Crusade and the Fifth Crusade, we will talk in a future podcast. Until now, I want to thank you as always for your attention. Just mentioning briefly that the decisive Battle of Hattin was an important victory, and I have to say that Saladin's victory of Hattin paved the way for further Islamic inroads into Christian territory and precipitated the fall of Acre, Jaffa, Gaza, and the city of Jerusalem, along with some 50 Crusader castles. Thank you again. If you have any questions, you can leave comments, and I'll be glad to try to reply to all of you. Thank you again, and we'll see each other in the next podcast with more on this series of the history of Islam, and now our discussion on the time of the Crusades.